First tonight, another jailbreak here in Nigeria. The search is on for scores of prisoners who escaped from a prison near the capital, Abuja, after rain damaged part of the building and brought down a perimeter fence. At least 118 prisoners managed to break free. The prison authorities said 10 inmates have been recaptured and a massive manhunt is underway to find the rest, calling on residents around Abuja to report any suspicious movement. They blamed the escape on the colonial-era prisons, which they said were old and weak, adding that the government was working to replace all aging facilities. Prison breaks are fairly frequent in Nigeria due to poor infrastructure and lax security measures. Thousands of inmates have escaped in recent years, with around 600 managing to break out in a single incident in July 2022, when the West African branch of the so-called Islamic State carried out an attack on a high-security prison in Abuja.
To assure you that we are talking to sister agencies to make sure that we are able to synergize, collaborate, ensure that there's timely return, of these escapees, and you can be rest assured we'll put everything in place to make sure that this does not happen again. 119 escaped, and 10 had been gotten, so we still have 109, at large. And let me say this was a facility that was built to house 250, and obviously because of, before the incident that happened, we had 499. This goes to what we keep talking about overcrowding in our correctional centers. So this is, as much as by the grace of God, I'm very optimistic we'll solve this problem, but it also gives us probing questions, and in every crisis, there's always an opportunity for greatness. So it's for us to, as a people, as a country, to also be able to sit down and critically be able to fashion out a correctional system, that will work for us and to the benefit of all Nigerians. But as I've said, there are a lot of things that I won't be able to say on camera, even with the correctional center, with a lot of reporting lines and a lot of issues.
That's the Nigerian Minister of Interior there. Well, for more on this, I'm joined now in the studio by Arise Defence and Security correspondent Ferdinand Duruoha. Good to see you, Ferdy.
Thank you so much, Charles.
You've been covering the story for us all day. What's the latest?
Well, Charles, we never expected that there was going to be any jailbreak anytime soon. Well, looking back at, the frequencies that we had from 2015 up until the one that happened in Kuje that you referenced earlier, well, we had about 14. And, well, since 2022, well, we've not had any. And we're thinking that, well, maybe what was supposed to have been done had been done. But clearly, we saw the fault lines. They saw it, they took advantage. Now, a part of the perimeter fence had caved in during the rains. And guess what? Well, all the inmates needed to do was push it all down.
But in the meantime, just sorry to interrupt you there, in terms of the recapture and the latest, it's still 10 that they've just...
Well, I put a call across, just a couple of minutes back, and I heard that 4 more have been rearrested. Now, the sad thing is, when you take a look at the situations, well, it's more convenient, or perhaps within the first 24 hours, well, that's exactly when you want to make the most arrest. And that's because after then, the footprints begin to go cold and, it becomes much more difficult. Well, some people would have been able to, build on the momentum and then escape. Absolutely. And so it's much more difficult. So I think this is quite slow. It's quite poor. I remember in Kuje, well, in the first day, well, they got over 100. And sadly, nobody has put out statistics in terms of the numbers that we have seen, being recaptured. Now, that's also a fault. Now, we're hoping that the government will do some things that, some suggestions that some analysts have, put out there, which is that we must, as quick as possible, begin to see pictures put these faces together. But sadly, Charles, well, most of these inmates were awaiting trial. And so what it means...
I was going to ask you that question, actually. I'm going to get to that in a minute. But you were talking about previous jailbreaks taking place in Nigeria. Those escapes are usually due to human intervention, where somebody actually breaks them out of the jail. But this time it seems like it's an act of nature. How unusual is that?
Well, the minister called it, he called it a force majeure, but you definitely want to look at it and say that, things possibly should have been done. Now, and then also, no matter what the situation is, a lack of management amplifies the lapses. Now, how quick were the authorities to get themselves together and then try to rearrest? Now, from what we got from some of the witnesses that we spoke with who live within the environment, they were the ones who helped recapture some of these persons or stopped some people from escaping. Sadly, it happened during a heavy downpour, and so they also couldn't react on time. Now that's exactly why. But then when they noticed that people were running, prisoners were running, they came out and then stopped them. They said they threw stones at them, they threw sticks, and then some of them got frightened and then ran back into the facility. And that's the reason why we didn't see the facility, we didn't meet it empty, because it wasn't as if the authorities on ground reacted early enough.
And that's a very important point that you raised there. And there are fears, aren't there, that the escaped... I mean, you're also a defense correspondent, so you deal with the army and all the rest of it. And there are fears that the escaped prisoners could find their way into the forests that connect the satellite town Suleja to neighboring states, and those forests are said to be hideouts of major criminal gangs that are called bandits.
You are very, very correct. Well, in the course of a reportage, well, we've seen the police, like you do frequently, parade some suspects whom we hear were escapees from major jailbreaks. That happened, in Delta, in Edo State, that which happened in Kogi State, and even rearrest some people who fled the Kuje prison when they committed crimes. Now, the sad thing is this. You take a look at the facility, like we noted earlier, built in the 50s, and since then, you look at the environment, well, just about 15 meters, not more than 15 meters, there are houses within that vicinity. And so these people they practically live with, residents of Suleja, and which is not supposed to be so. And so for these residents, well, right now, there's panic, there's fear, and they are saying that, well, they do not expect that these guys would have left anytime soon. And so, well, maybe some of them would begin to commit some of these atrocities, but the fear is that they might go link up with some others
who would obviously give them protection. And of course, Nigerian prisons, you were talking about this earlier, are known to be overcrowded.
True.
With up to 70% of the inmates still awaiting trial.
Definitely, and it's not just in one facility. There are, it's been noticed in all of the facilities. At least there is a double of the capacity in all of the facilities. For some of them, there are there's close to 300% of what is supposed to be. Well, you have a capacity, a prison that is supposed to hold 400, and it's holding close to 2,000. This was supposed to hold 250. Now you have close to 400, close to 490 or thereabouts. Now, sadly, well, the government have made efforts to try and construct some prisons. Well, they talked about constructing about 6 of them in various parts of the country. Well, sadly, it's only one that we have seen being completed. That which what is being constructed in Abuja, 3,000 capacity, Charles. Now that has been that's been ongoing for more than 8 years. And you ask questions, well, how much does it take to build this facility or to complete this facility? The last time there was a tour by the former minister, well, it was close to 80% complete. And you wonder why they wouldn't complete it. When you take a look at the situation in Kuje, that is very, very overcrowded. You take a look at the situation in Suleja. Now, these places border the federal capital. And if there's any place that you definitely do not want strange faces, it is obviously in the federal capital.
Ferdinand, thank you very much indeed. Ferdinand Duruoha is Arise Defense and Security Correspondent.